I mean, I think it's easy to think of the champagne moments of the boss, and they exist and they're great. Don't get me wrong. But those moments when your family bank account is draining to meet payroll and you realize you're going into debt and you're overworked and can't take a break, it's stressful. It's really stressful. So something had to change. And basically, one of the journeys that I went on was a pricing journey. Welcome to the Sunlight Podcast. In this show, we're talking about taxes, money, and careers for creative people who have a big vision for changing the world with their work. I'm your host, Hannah Cole, artist, tax pro, and the founder of Sunlight Tax. If you're an artist, designer, or creative entrepreneur who wants to grow your business sustainably, manage your taxes, and build a stash of fuck you money so you can control your own time and have a bigger impact with your work, you are in the right place. Hello, welcome. Today, I want to talk to you about something a little bit different. I want to talk about the back end of my business, some changes I have made to my flagship program, and hopefully give you some lessons that you yourself can take away from that. Because I know a lot of you listening to this are running businesses of your own. And I didn't invent the problems that I haven't encountered in my business. And I feel quite sure that some of what I have been going through over the last year, 2 years, probably will feel familiar to a lot of you. So hopefully this will really help you. And please tell me if it does. Please send me a DM on Instagram because I would really love to connect about it. I would love to hear what you have struggled with as a business owner and hear if this was helpful to you because, oh man, I've got a lot more coming if you want to hear it. So let me know. All right. So I want to talk about changes that I've made to my program and what I was going through at the time and what the logic was. Now, part of the reason I also want to say this is because a lot of you have been following me for a while and many people sort of learn about me and they maybe listen to the podcast or read my newsletter and they have my downloadable like visual guide to tax deductions. And they're thinking about maybe joining my program, but they're not so sure. And so I see people show up for launch after launch, free masterclass after masterclass for 2, 3, 4 different times. And then eventually, when the timing is right, or they have gained the level of trust that they need to feel confident about it, then they will join my program. Well, the thing is that if you have watched masterclasses before, and just for full transparency, when I offer my free masterclasses, I teach some really valuable stuff. And then in the end of the class, I talk about my program and how you can go deeper in the stuff that I have taught through my program. It is a pretty sort of classic way of presenting the topic and sort of like getting deeper into why you might want to do deeper work on these issues, right? But if you've been to a masterclass a while ago, you may have an idea in your head about what my program is, and it may be wrong because I've actually made a lot of changes in response to some things that I want to talk about. So, this can be a sort of 2-part thing for those of you who are curious what those changes are because you thought about joining Money Bootcamp. And for those of you who are running businesses of your own who want to see how I have made decisions and how I have struggled with, life circumstances and business conditions. I hope it's helpful for both of you. And, just to loop this back to one of the core values that I have here at Sunlight Tax as a company, one of those core values has always been reciprocity. To me, I don't ask things of my clients that I'm not willing to do myself. And I like to really model for my clients things that I advocate for them. And this has always been the first of my core values. It's the first thing I teach anybody when I hire them in Sunlight Tax. Not only do you have to speak really respectfully and empathetically with people who come to us, but they need to speak that way to you. And if they don't, I want to hear about it. And I fire clients very liberally because it's not right? There's no relationship that should be one-sided ever. I give, you give, I receive, you receive. So that's important. And so this is an episode that almost is going to reflect that kind of reciprocity, that it's both for the person who might be considering joining my program, what that involves. And then it also involves me, the business owner, the person on the other side of that transaction, and what I'm going through and why I might make these decisions. Because, it's possible that you've never thought about it from that perspective before. So here we go. If you don't know, or if you're new to, Sunlight Tax and to my work, I run a program that is called Money Bootcamp. And the purpose of it is to teach people who are self-employed, basically how to manage the hard stuff of being self-employed, how to manage the money and setup and financial side of that. So I am trained in taxes, so it is highly oriented towards the tax side of that. There's a real reason there, and that's because taxes are the part you cannot avoid, right? Even if you feel allergic to everything, you have to pay your taxes, right? So you really have to manage that. But as a tax expert, there's all this expertise that I gain about advantages built into the system, even for the smallest of businesses, except that I find that those small businesses, they have tight budgets, and a lot of people coming from the creative world like myself, we don't have a good education in this stuff. I mean, here's a little side note. Nobody does, but we don't have a good financial background. And so a lot of people have no idea that there are big tax advantages that they can take advantage of to grow their retirement, to have better financial security, and getting into stuff like investing. And that taxes actually integrate with that stuff, because it's through tax advantaged accounts that the IRS delivers these like accelerated, basically savings vehicles to you. So Money Bootcamp basically tries to teach all of that stuff in a packaged way to people, so that it's one to many, right? So, because if you did this work with me one-on-one, it would cost a fortune, right? Like I could only serve a handful of people. But because it's packaged and pre-recorded, I'm able to sell it at a much lower fee than one-on-one, right? So that's kind of the point, right? And if you've ever been to a tax practice and had paid for a tax return, especially if you're kind of a younger baby business, you've probably come to realize that when you buy a tax return, you're only getting a tax return, even though it's for you, maybe the only touch point you have with a tax or financial person all year. You probably learned very quickly that you are not getting other stuff. You are not getting often any explanation about what's in your tax return. I mean, hopefully you do. I think you really should, but a lot of times you don't. You're not getting a lot of opportunity to ask a whole bunch of questions. If you really have a lot of questions, if you need deeper stuff like setup or which kind of account should I choose and how do those work and show me the math, you are not going to get that stuff. And so I just found that there's a real hole, a real gap in the information that small self-employed business people have, and they need it, right? But they often don't have the funds to access that information one-on-one with an accountant or a lawyer or a personal plan, a financial planner. So that's what Money Bootcamp is. That's my program, right? As originally designed, I built it for artists and creative people. Although I will tell you that over time, the secret is it's really for self-employed people. And I have found that people keep finding me who are in a broader and broader circles outside of creative work, because the fact is, for example, I made this discovery about 2 years ago that healers, people in the wellness space, often have very similar issues and problems to people in the creative world. So because I'm myself creative, I built it around creative people, because we are so ill-served by accountants who often really do not get the kind of life we want to live, the sort of values first, money second orientation that we often have, and just the lifestyle choices of being a creative person. Like being a full-time artist is very risky, and you stand out and you're kind of an outsider. And when you're an accountant, you are the opposite of that. You are risk averse. You are much more conformist minded, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a sort of cultural difference, right? So I discovered that actually there are healers and people in the wellness space who feel very similarly, right? They do their business in a very mission-oriented way. They're doing it from a place of love and service, just like creative people are. I just started seeing a lot of people, wellness people, witches, herbalists, acupuncturists joining into Money Bootcamp. And I was like, oh, look at this. So I've started to realize that there's a lot more groups of people who don't feel a cultural fit with the accounting and financial professional world. And it's my aim to just speak to those people, you listening right now, possibly from a place of understanding and empathy and totally getting that while I'm trying to teach you about money stuff, I fully recognize that your business is not driven by profit only and above all else. That in fact, you are very oriented towards a mission, a purpose, something kind of bigger than yourself. And often that you prioritize above money. Okay, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. So there's been a lot of evolution over the years in my program. And just to sort of set the baseline, the way that I originally built Money Bootcamp was as a membership. And part of that was to do handholding through 12 months of the year because, of course, the heavy lift is in tax season when you are trying to get through this massive job and you feel really confused. But I was finding that people have, there's times you want to check in and do, year-end tax planning or learn how to issue 1099s. And so there's like these touch points across the year where it's really good to have a check-in. So I built it as a membership. And when I originally priced it, I priced it way too low. I mean, it was okay at the time. It was what I did. I think a lot of us start our businesses and we put a price on something, and pricing is difficult to get right? And it takes time and it takes experience. And you don't know what you don't know, right? I didn't know how much work it was to run a membership program. I also did not, even though I think I set up this business with pretty good sense of boundaries, it was very hard for me to manage a group of people who now, felt probably deservedly so that they should be able to ask me questions and would just like pepper me with questions sort of all the time. And I found that my inbox got so full of questions that I could barely get anything else done. So it was sort of tricky, right? The membership turns out to be quite difficult to run. You have to send out Zoom links, coordinate times, make sure people show up, get them the recording. You have to have, a lot of times there's like a group component. So anyway, it was a lot of work, and it was frankly more work than I expected it to be when I started the program. And so I priced it expecting a certain level of work. And then I realized it was way more work. And my price, it took me actually years to realize that my price was too low. I resisted that thought. But it was because, in fact, I couldn't handle all the work on my own, and I had to hire other people in order to help me manage the workload. And once you hire, that will tell you very quickly if your prices are appropriate or not, because hiring other people, man, there's some lessons there. I could do a whole episode on that. When you hire somebody, you're legally obligated to pay them first. When you're the boss, you get paid last. And if you don't make enough money, then you're the one who doesn't get paid. And in fact, the payroll has to go through no matter what. That is what employment law says. And so there were some moments where I had a lot of people working at Sunlight Tax, and I was not making enough to cover payroll. And that money was simply draining our family bank account. So, I mean, I think it's easy to think of the champagne moments of the boss, and they exist and they're great. Don't get me wrong. But those moments when your family bank account is draining to meet payroll, and you realize you're going into debt and you're overworked and can't take a break, it's stressful. It's really stressful. So something had to change. And basically, one of the journeys that I went on was a pricing journey. And the pricing journey, I experimented with different price points and offerings and things like this. And I did ultimately have a couple different points where I raised the price of my program. And that was a really big deal and important. And I learned a lot. Okay. So the program was a membership, but I heard feedback from people that the sort of highest level price that I went to was clearly harder for people to access. And it cut down the number of people who joined my program quite a bit. Now, to be clear, because I was so overwhelmed by how many people were in my program, and I'm so thankful, and it's a wonderful thing, but I was actually very happy to have fewer people in the program. And so sometimes price can be a way to, if you take an economics class, it's actually very clear. Pricing can be a way to, to drop off people who don't value the thing as highly. And so when you raise your prices, what you're actually doing when we strictly speak about economics is you're taking people at the top of the price curve, people who value what you offer at the highest level and to the highest degree, right? And that's actually a really nice customer because that's somebody who really values you. This is actually a really solid argument for not having your prices be too low. And I'm here to say with experience that is really true. There are people who understand the value and who do really prize it and value it highly and simply don't have the funds. That does exist. That is real. And I do really care about those people and want to reach ideally everyone, but you can't. But the fact is, I also have needs, right? The business is, yes, it is about serving other people, but I couldn't offer my program for $1, right? I would be working all the time. I would never see my children. I would have no quality of life, and I would not have enough to pay the mortgage, right? So pricing is a two-way thing, right? I talked about reciprocity. So it's really important that your prices actually support your life, right? I'm not driving a fancy car. My life is, it's nice, it's comfortable, but it's relatively modest. But, life is pretty expensive. And I have 2 kids I'm really trying to pay for college for, right? So pricing matters. And really, pricing is fully my responsibility. So I get to pick, you, the business owner, you get to pick where your prices are. The market will tell you if they think it's appropriate or not. And your job is to listen to the market, listen to if your sales drop way off. I'm telling you, sometimes when I've raised my prices, it's been deliberate and it's been to drop people off on purpose because I'm too busy, right? And I'm basically raising my prices to say, only those of you who really value this are going to get to stay. And you can make that decision. You can literally, right? Whether you pay for what I offer, that is up to you. That's not up to me. It's not appropriate or fair or reasonable that ever be my job. You choose. It's none of my business how much money you have or what you value, right? That is fully in your court as the consumer. And so, I do my job. I put my prices where I put them. And then you respond. Do you value it at that level or do you not? Are you able to pay for it at this time or are you not? Right? It's not really it is a value judgment in a sense, right? You're saying, do I value this at this level? And that is, I think that's why pricing brings up mindset stuff for people, myself included. Absolutely. But it's a really important thing to do, right? So I'm just saying, sometimes having customers drop off is actually what you want. And I have done that on purpose before. And I will say there have been times, most especially in my tax practice, where clients who are the most concerned about the price are also the worst clients, the most demanding, the most unappreciative of what it takes for me to deliver what they're asking for or paying for. I'm not the first person to have this discovery in business. You may have, if you reflect on where you're at in your work, I'm curious if you have had the same experience. There are people out there who really have an expectation that they should get everything for cheap, and they really don't have a lot of thought about what that takes on the other side. It exists. That is out there. And pricing to weed out that customer who will run you ragged and not really care if you stay up all night serving them and never see your kids, you might not want them, right? That might not be who you want to fill your time with. I personally do find it so gratifying to speak with people who are like, oh my gosh, this is so nice to be able to talk to you, to be able to get this question answered. When I hear feedback like that, I'm like, oh, it fills me up. It fulfills me. It makes me feel so good about what I'm doing. And, who doesn't like to feel appreciated, right? I don't like serving people who feel entitled to my time. And I feel, on the other hand, so grateful and fulfilled and happy when I serve people who appreciate it, who appreciate what it takes for me to be able to deliver it and deliver it at the level that I do. Okay, that was more than I intended on pricing, but there we go. A little pricing sidestep for you. Tell me if that's helpful for you. I mean, I know that it can be a little bit of a third rail. I'm a little nervous about some of you writing me angrily after that. Please don't. I really wish you wouldn't. But it really is a two-sided thing. And I think it's important to understand from both parties where the responsibility lies. I think that's kind of the key to pricing and, letting go the opinions of the people who will judge you. Basically, they're always going to be there. And so if that's going to be the thing in your way, it'll never be out of your way. You just kind of have to learn how to handle it. Hey, I'm interrupting this episode of the Sunlight Podcast to tell you about a class that I'm giving that's free to help you organize for taxes and grow that giant pile of FU money. It'll help you understand your taxes and fortify your business. I'm going to talk about the mistakes that every creative person makes when it comes to their business. And I'm going to talk about some steps in the framework that I use in my programs that will help you get yourself organized, understand your situation better, and get your head right about growing a pile of fuck you money. It comes in the packaging of a very creative, friendly space. It's a safe space with no jargon. I make no assumptions about you having any financial knowledge beforehand. So you can just come as you are, feel safe, and learn what you want to learn. Register for the class. It's free at go.sunlighttax.com/register. Okay. In order to lower the price of my course, so eventually I came to a sort of equilibrium point where I sort of had the prices about where they felt appropriate, where I could pay my staff appropriately for as hard as they were working, and as much as I was asking of them, and also have money not draining out of my family accounts, right? Like where I was in positive territory. So my pricing reached an equilibrium, but it's still a lot of work to run a membership. It's a lot of work to have employees. It means you have a lot of meetings. It means you have to communicate triple much. There's a lot to it. And there have been times I've been very exhausted with that. I'm a new boss. I haven't employed people for so long, and the learning curve was very steep for me. That's a whole other episode. I've made a lot of mistakes, no question. But it's exhausting to run a team as well. So there's that. And so there have been moments where I had a staff change or somebody left, and I thought, you know what? Instead of replacing them, I'm actually going to reorient my program so that I'm not running it in a way where it requires that person. And so that actually happened. And it just kind of made me have a real come to Jesus moment over what I was doing in my company. And I realized, okay, if I restructured this program, I've had people who want to be in it, who have said that at this price point, they can't join, which is fine. I could make this more accessible by changing the structure so I don't have to do as much work every time somebody joins. So I made a decision to change my program away from being a membership and to being a self-study course. So it's a self-study program. This was not incredibly hard to do, but there you go. That was my decision. And so I restructured it and repackaged it so that my program could be delivered as a sort of, you get it all at one time, self-study program. You go through the courses at your own pace, and there you go. This was really awesome when I did that, because I started realizing that though I had assumed it would take the average person a year to get through my program, in fact, I started seeing a lot of people join in a state of really needing the info and a lot of passion about getting on top of this, and they zoom through it, right? So a lot of people will power through my whole program in 2 months and get the whole thing, get all their bookkeeping set up, their taxes done for the year, start setting up the accounts they need for retirement and, all that kind of legal stuff. And they're done 2 months. And I had been telling people this takes a year based on basically not much, just my idea of it, right? So I learned stuff from my clients. Once I allowed people to go through at whatever pace they wanted, I saw, some people will buy programs and they will never open it. Also, I do everything I can to try and get people engaged, but, also I can't control people's behavior. So if you want to do that, you're welcome to, but I feel sad. I wish you would. But a lot of people would join and do it so much faster than I thought was possible. So I think that's really interesting. That was a real lesson for me. So it's been really exciting to be able to form like a self-study package and offer my program that way, because it's allowed me to offer Money Bootcamp at basically like a third of the price that I did at its peak. So in case you're curious, Money Bootcamp costs $1,597, $1,597 paid in full. I give a discount for paying up front, and I also have a payment plan. Yeah, so at its peak, it cost about $4,000, and I was able to drop the price to $1,597. And that, to me, I'm really excited about. That is a price that allows me to pay myself and pay my staff in a way that is fair, that I can run the company at the speed that I want to. I can take breaks. It's a way that I can have sustainability on my side. And that's really important, right? Nobody is there to put the oxygen mask on me except for me. And I hope you know that in your business. So that's been really awesome, being able to cut the price that dramatically and just be able to offer it in a way that it's accessible to a lot more people. Now, of course, there's still people who cannot, that pricing is still not accessible to them. And you know what? There's no price where somebody can't access it. There's no time where it's going to be perfect or it's going to be possible for everyone. So I've put it where it can sustain me and I don't start resenting clients because I feel like I'm overworked and underpaid. I feel like I have enough cushion with this pricing that it works, right? For me and for my staff. So there's that. Okay. I also put quizzes into the program. This I decided to do because, I think when you have a self-study course, I think there can be issues about people doing it. I really want people to stay as engaged as they can so that they get results, right? I'm not trying to sell my course just to make sales. I really care that people do it, right? That people get the information and they integrate it, they take the action, they integrate it into their lives, right? And self-study courses are a little tricky. This is why a membership, this is why you might choose to do a membership instead, because you're there constantly, right? You are spending your time with people and helping them like hold their hand through the process. People do really like that. Of course, it takes a lot more coordination, a lot more time commitment from me. It's a lot more difficult to run. So I decided to add quizzes to my program as one way to just help people feel accountable to the material and know really clearly if they're getting it or not. So to me, quizzes are kind of a solution I was able to do where I could just put in the work one time and then it's there to serve people. The other decision that I made in my program that I think has really helped, one, allowed me to lower my prices, but also I think it just puts more power in the hands of the person who joins the program, is I decided to decouple the one-on-one time from the program. So as I used to have Money Bootcamp, it came with some consultation time with me, but it meant I had to keep all these checklists of like who had their time with me and who still was owed it and who I had to follow up with to make sure they booked. And you can just imagine on the back end, when you have a lot of people, that starts to get really messy and complicated. So I just started basically offering it in a way where I don't have to track all of that. It's not included. One-on-one time is not included in the program. And that way I can offer it for the absolute minimum price. And I use one-on-one time as an add-on. And the cool thing about that is what it means is, again, going back to like economics, it means people who value one-on-one time, who know they're going to get something out of it, who are ready for it where it's appropriate, they can book it. Right. And they can book as much as they want. I actually also lifted the cap on it. Right. So it used to be you got one session with me. Now you can book as much as you want, as long as I'm available. And so I feel like that is really nice because you can basically adjust it up or down and you can do it. You don't have to commit up front to paying for my one-on-one time, which is always going to cost more money than something that's prepackaged. So that decoupling to me has been a really awesome innovation, something I feel really proud of. So you can use it as much as you want. And if you're just like, you know what, I want to do this, but as budget consciously as I possibly can, you're not paying for it up front. You don't have to pay for any ever. Okay. So that's been a really cool innovation. I'm proud of that. The other thing I like to do is, reward people who are in my program. So I basically have a different link to book my time from the inside of my program that I have from the outside. So if you are just like discovering Sunlight Tax, discovering my work for the first time, and you want to book a one-on-one call with me, you can. And I do offer one-on-one consults with the general public. You can book those right on the front of my website. And I charge $200 for a session. When you're in my program, I charge $100. So basically, I charge half price to people who are in my program so that it feels more accessible and they're more interested in booking more. And that's a good thing, because when you use one-on-one time, you often get questions answered, you get directed there more quickly. It's a really good use of your time, I think, and your dollars. But again, I put that decision into the customer's hands and not mine. And then another thing I have done that I feel really excited about in the program is I have started experimenting with giving sort of coupons or vouchers for the costs of touch points that people have before they join my program. So this is not a guarantee. I don't guarantee this up front. What I have started doing is on the one-on-one call. So if a person comes to Sunlight Tax and they've, never interacted with me before, they're kind of testing things out. My price point is high enough. A lot of people need to really think about if they're going to join my program or not. And that's totally reasonable. That's a good thing to do. But if you want to book a call with me, book a one-on-one session and talk through a tax issue, et cetera, what I've started doing is on the back end of that appointment that you make with me, I give you a coupon good for, 30 days, or it's time limited, but I give you a coupon for that amount, the price of that call, off the cost of joining Money Bootcamp. In other words, I've made it so that if you join Money Bootcamp within 30 days of that call becomes free. So in other words, I'm trying to let people test me out, test out my style, my ability to answer their questions in a way that has a lower risk. So, if you do the call and you think it's good, but you're kind of done there, that's all you need, you're done. Like, you've paid for it. I got compensated for my time, which is important to me, and we're done. Right. And you can book another one if you want. You can keep booking one-on-one sessions with me as much as you like, if the price feels like a price that is worth it to you. And it might not. You don't have to book them. But if you do, it means that you get a coupon so that when you join Money Bootcamp, the call becomes free, right? So you're not paying in addition. So in other words, I'm trying to take the risk out for people when they join Money Bootcamp, if they want to kind of test me out a little bit first. That feels very fair to me, and I'm so happy to do that. The new thing that I'm testing that I think is pretty fun and I'm kind of excited about, because I really love teaching. I love learning new things and I love sharing them with people. And, there's lots that is a moving target when you're in the world of tax, because tax laws get updated every single year. So there's always updates, right? And there's new issues that will come and evolve and new market conditions. So lots happens in the financial world that you have to stay on top of. So I do like to be teaching all the time. Plus it keeps me sharp, right? So something that I'm experimenting with in the future is actually teaching classes, like having paid workshops, live workshops with me, paid live workshops that also work in that same way with a coupon to Money Bootcamp. So if you join my paid live workshop that you will get, if you join Money Bootcamp afterwards, you can take the live workshop, you can learn a thing. Like the day that this is coming out is actually going to be the day I'm teaching one of these workshops. It's about the new energy tax credits that are available in the Inflation Reduction Act. You still have a minute to join. If you're looking at this right now, you can go to courses.sunlighttax.com/cash if you want to check that out, if you want to join in today, if you're listening in the morning. But I'm experimenting with offering coupons when people join a paid program, where the price of the paid program, if you decide you want to join bootcamp, then gets discounted off of your price of bootcamp. So in other words, you can kind of use it as a test, and there's no, like, I'm paid for my time or paid for the space that you took up in the workshop, whether or not you joined bootcamp, but then, you have a way to test out whether you like my teaching style, whether I did a good job, and then, use that to make a decision if you want to join bootcamp. So I think that's really fun. And I'm kind of going to see how that goes today in this session I'm running on the Inflation Reduction Act energy credits. And I've got lots more ideas of things I want to teach in the future in that way, live workshops where I teach a thing and then you can, pay to join, and then you can come into Money Bootcamp afterwards. And of course, if you're in Money Bootcamp already, you get access to these live workshops anyway. So those are kind of the things I wanted to tell you. Oh, there's one more thing. The other thing is about about asking questions. So when it comes to a lot of online programs, online courses, a lot of times there are group coaching sessions, or there's a Facebook group, or live sessions where people can do a Q&A. And I have had those in the past inside of Money Bootcamp. I have had a Facebook group in the past. It is no longer. And I've had live Zoom sessions where I opened up to questions. And this is kind of a point of difference between me being in the tax world and any other coach. I actually have a lot of restrictions about what I can and can't do regarding questions because of my tax license. So I actually don't have the freedom to open up a group session where we start talking about individual people's tax issues, the way that in another group coaching program, you might be able to just in a group setting, ask questions of the coach. This has always been a sore point for me. I've always wished I could, but it's just been really difficult. And when I've allowed people to email me tax questions, which I don't allow anymore, when I used to allow that, I would get so flooded with people's tax questions. No one person thought they were snowing me under, but the cumulative effect of everybody's tax questions meant I had such a full inbox that I could not respond to everybody and I could not manage my work anymore. So I had to stop it just for my mental health. It just was not possible. It's also important. I think a lot of people don't realize that there is a lot of due diligence required of me when I am talking about taxes. And it is not safe or even legal for me to just answer a quick tax question, which is why almost any accountant you will ever talk to will not give you any tax information without you signing an engagement letter and probably paying for it. So I'm not alone in that area, but I think there's because I look like a coach and I like to act like a coach, I think people will sometimes have this expectation that I can behave like any other coach and have group sessions. And the fact is, I really can't. And when I used to have those group, the Facebook group, I realized that stuff would happen in there that made me so nervous that a lawsuit was ultimately going to come and find me, because what would happen is people would start asking their tax questions in the Facebook group. And I would find that other people in the group would answer their tax questions. And these are not tax experts and not people who know the tax law. And they would answer, and they would sometimes they'd be right, but sometimes they'd be wrong. And then the person who got the answer wouldn't remember who said it to them, and they would think it was me. And they would think that I was giving incorrect tax advice in a Facebook group. And I had to, as soon as that started happening, I shut the Facebook group down. I basically was like, this can't happen. So it was too scary. It was too risky. And my lawyer agreed with me. So that was the end of that. And I just decided all tax information is one-on-one. That solves the privacy issue, and it helps me be fully focused on the one person at the time that it happens. And I think it is the best possible way to do tax questions. Okay. So that was a lot. That was a lot about my program. It was a lot about my thinking as a business person. So I'm really curious. Tell me what you think. Tell me if this episode spoke to you. Tell me if you want to hear more sort of behind the scenes stuff about how I've made decisions in my business. Tell me if this is helpful to you. I'd really love to know. You can DM me at Sunlight Tax. And if you feel like, oh, you're kind of interested in what this Money Bootcamp is and you want to learn more about the program, no pressure, but just if you want to see what it is, you can always do that by going to watch that masterclass I referred to, where I teach you some common mistakes that people make with their money. And I teach you the framework that I use inside of Money Bootcamp to teach people how to handle the hard stuff. And you can sign up for that class and watch it on demand at go.sunlighttax.com/register. That is go.sunlighttax.com/register. And if you also are in the boat where you're like, oh, maybe I want a one-on-one to talk through my, year-end tax planning, or how to issue 1099s, or, how to just get my tax documents organized in January, whatever it is, whatever, maybe you got Venmo, PayPal issues you want to work out. If you have some kind of thing that you want to talk to me about one-on-one, you can always book one of those one-on-one calls with me. That's available right on the Sunlight Tax website. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, it's near the bottom, little book a one-on-one button. And you now know that if you do that, you get a little coupon in your confirmation that will give you that price off of Money Bootcamp if you decide you want to join it within about 30 days. So I hope that's been really helpful for you. Please DM me on Instagram @SunlightTax if you have thoughts about that, if you would like more of this behind the scenes stuff. And thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day. Hey, I'm interrupting this episode of the Sunlight Podcast to tell you about a class that I'm giving that's free to help you organize for taxes and grow that giant pile of FU money. It'll help you understand your taxes and fortify your business. I'm going to talk about the mistakes that every creative person makes when it comes to their business. And I'm going to talk about some steps in the framework that I use in my programs that will help you get yourself organized, understand your situation better, and get your head right about growing a pile of fuck you money. It comes in the packaging of a very creative, friendly space. It's a safe space with no jargon. I make no assumptions about you having any financial knowledge beforehand. So you can just come as you are, feel safe, and learn what you want to learn. Register for the class. It's free at go.sunlighttax.com/register. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. It really helps, and share it with a friend. I'm so grateful. This podcast is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links we reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.